And gentlemen, welcome back to TLT Talks. Look at this. We got this nice little background now. Always improving a little bit, 1% at a time, 1% at a time. Well, we've got a very interesting show for you today. The Litvak team has arrived in Queens. We are going to be joined today by Marc Dimov, who it feels like has been with us for 5 minutes, but man, it's been like over 6 months already. And we were getting more and more demand in Queens, and Marc and I had met and thought it'd be a great idea to partner up. He will be jumping on here any second. Marc, find that little button, click join, and let's rock and roll. Let's try to see if we can invite him. No request. Instagram still makes... There it is.
All right.
Mr. Dimov, how goes it?
Mr. Litvak, everything is great. Rocking and rolling. How you feeling?
There we go. I feel fantastic. So, Marc, why don't you let the world, or you know, at least our audience, maybe not the whole world, at least our audience know, give us a little bit about yourself. Who are you? What are you about? What are you doing here?
Sure. Well, loving being a part of the Litvak team. It's been a fun ride so far for the past 6, 7, 8 months. It's felt like 5 minutes. We're going super fast, and it's great to help the team service Queens. Being Queens professional, helping out particularly Western Queens. I currently live in Astoria. I've been here for 15 years, so my focus is Astoria, Long Island City, Sunnyside, Woodside, and I'm covering the full gamut. I'm an agent. Co-ops, condos, single family, multifamily, land, representing landlords with their leasing, some commercial stuff. So covering a whole bunch of stuff.
Truly a jack of all trades, and don't let him fool you. We're doing plenty of stuff together in Brooklyn as well. But it's very cool. You know, we've always had this. You know, I love Queens, man. And we've always had this. We've always had a lot of requests for Queens. We didn't have any real bandwidth there, and now we do. That's it. Brooklyn, Queens, Manhattan, baby. Who knows what maybe tomorrow?
Who's around?
Maybe stand out. I don't know what's gonna happen tomorrow. Who knows? Marc, give us a fun fact, man. Marc's actually, for you guys that'll get to know Marc through the team on a personal level. He's a really cool, fun dude. Give us a fun fact, Marc.
Fun fact, I'm an avid skier. I love skiing, actually skiing and snowboarding. I've been skiing since I was like 8 years old, and I love going out west. Love that POW. Get me to Whistler, get me to Jackson Hole, get me to Colorado, wherever it is.
Love it.
That snow.
Love it. I've been to Whistler. Whistler's real nice. And your dog is probably one of my favorite pets. Like super adorable, like super duper adorable. Marc posted a story yesterday. He walked to the car, and his dog loves the car. And the dog thought they were going for a ride, and they weren't. And the dog's face was just sheer, like Marc had just totally and utterly crushed his dreams. It was such a cute story. Now, all right. Well,
what do you mean we're not going in the car?
What's that?
I said she was so disappointed. She's like, "What do you mean we're not going in the car?"
So it was like a human emotion on her face. It was so like, what are you doing, bro? Where are we going? All right. Well, we could hang all day. We got 25 minutes to nail what you and I think is a very important topic, and especially for now and where things are going with the market and such, and that is renting versus buying. So, Marc, let's start with your thoughts on renting versus buying, and I think you wanted to discuss first the actual real cost of not buying or renting. So I think that's a good place for us to kick this off.
Yeah, so you know, the question comes up a lot: should I continue renting or should I buy? And there's not a blanket answer. It really depends on everybody's individual circumstances. It depends on what their current financial situation is. It depends on, you know, where they're currently living, what they're optimizing for, what their personal goals are. You know, no two situations are the same. But what does come up, and what I ask my clients to consider is to consider the cost of not buying. Right? If you just look at the cost of renting an apartment, let's say you have a one-bedroom apartment for $3,000 a month, times 12 months, $36,000 a year, times 10 years. I mean, you're just
vomit.
You're giving your money away. You're just giving your money away. I've been there. You've been there. We've all been there. And it's an uncomfortable thing, but you think about over the course of time, the accumulation of paid rent, it's just simply staggering, you know?
Yeah. It's like it's like, why pay off somebody else's mortgage? Like, why build equity for someone else when you could pay for your own stuff? And so, yeah, like I couldn't agree more. This question comes up a lot. Do I rent or do I buy? And folks, here's what's really interesting. We are in unprecedented times. There's never been a time like this in history. The Fed is raising rates. We have thought this entire time that every time the Fed raises rates, that the banks would raise rates as well. And actually, for those that may not know this, the Fed and the banks, it's not the same rate. The Fed has their own rate. The banks have their own rates. I won't get too far into the weeds on it. But ultimately, it's not exactly the same thing. They're related, but it's not the same thing. So what's really reassuring is this most recent time that the Fed raised rates, the banks actually realized, holy moly, we're raising rates too fast. Contract volume is really slowing. Our revenue is withering away. And they pulled rates back, and that created a surge in the market. The last 3-4 weeks have been incredibly busy. And so it's a real weird time in history where the Fed's going up a lot. The banks are not perfectly aligned with the Fed. Prices should come down as rates go up. However, there's no inventory, and the rental prices are all-time highs all over the world. So it's like, again, I don't really have the money to buy. I hear you, but it's like, do you really have the money not to buy? Because the rents keep going up, and you're paying off your own mortgage versus somebody else's mortgage. So ultimately, what I want to convey, and I think what Marc's saying as well, is that you should have a conversation with whomever is that you speak with, because it's a weird time. Sometimes it is the right move to rent. Maybe there's a credit issue, maybe you're not quite there with the down payment. Like, sometimes there are scenarios where the right move is like, hang tight for a year or two. But there should always be a plan on the horizon to get yourself in an ownership situation. Even if you don't want to rent your primary residence, if you don't want to own your primary residence, a lot of developers rent their primary residence, but then they own a lot of other real estate. So all of the biggest upside in real estate happens to be neighbors that aren't fully developed yet. I got no issue with that either. If you want to rent your space and then go and invest your real estate part of your portfolio as investment property, that's cool too. There's a lot of different variables in how to do it. But ultimately, you want to be in a place where you're thinking about it, right? So, Marc, let me ask you this question. Based on all of what I just said, low inventory, nothing's really going on out there. You know what? I've watched the show, and I hear you guys. I'm John Smith, Eugene, Marc. You know what? If it's landed, great idea. I want to buy. What in the holy moly do I do now with such difficult market conditions?
Yeah, well, one thing that comes up, and I'm dealing with it with my buyers selectively, is some buyers have decided to put their search on hold. They put it on pause because with the interest rates going the way that they have, and I get that conceptually. However, when there's low inventory, prices are bound to continue to go up, right? And appreciation always takes place. We're in New York City, after all. This is always a desirable place to live. And look at this. When COVID happened, there was the tide went out, hundreds of thousands of people left, and sure enough, within a year and a half time, look, there was just a feeding frenzy of all these people coming back. So
of prices, crazy.
Yeah, so right. So consider not buying something now. Let's say something costs X today. It's going to cost X plus 5% a year from now. So sure, you might have to consider taking on a higher interest rate now, but your appreciation over the course of time is going to benefit you in the long run.
Yeah, for sure. And by the way, like, if the rate gets a lot better, you can always refinance, right? And in the long haul, like, it's funny. So I bought my first apartment in the Edge in Williamsburg in 2008. And by 2010, times were very different. And so we ended up closing, we ended up moving through. A lot of people backed out, whatever. But I remember by 2012, the prices went from 600 a foot to like 800 a foot. And people are like, oh, that's it. We've missed the boat. Williamsburg is so expensive now. And then 1,000 a foot. Oh, that's it. We've missed the boat. And then at 1,200, and then at 1,400. And, now in multiple places in Williamsburg, things trade for over 2,000 a foot. Real estate in New York, like, the price of milk never goes down. The price of water never goes down. The price of real estate does not go down long term. You might find a pocket. And that's what I would say to people is like, if you bought something at the wrong time, meaning you bought it 2007, let's say. Anything you bought 2007, very likely by 2012, you had already rebounded and made some money. Right, so these pockets, if we look at the last 20 years, the pockets of pullback have only really been, 12 to 18, let's say to 24 months. So as long as you're not a flipper or developer, as long as you're buying, and you don't have to sell within a certain period of time, it's very unlikely you're actually going to lose. And, part of it, Mark and I were talking about this right before, part of it is building the right team. A lot of transactions right now are happening off market, right? So if you're not working with a pro, someone that's developed in the neighborhood, someone that's got relationships, a lot of, the most common feedback we get about buyers that are trying to do this on their own is, well, I have Street Easy, I have Zillow, and so I'm cool. I can get properties on my own. But after COVID, some people are still very germ conscious, and they don't want to do public open houses and public listings, and a lot of things are trading offline. Sometimes, in a lot of cases, sellers don't know exactly what's going to happen, so they might not even give it a listing. They might just call someone like myself or Mark, any of the other thousands of agents, and they say, hey, listen, I'm not listing it, but if you have someone, I would sell my apartment for X. And there's a lot of transactions that are happening that way. So if you're not talking to a broker, if you're not in a relationship with someone that has relationships, very likely you may not be seeing the best properties, especially with these inventory levels.
Example of just that, and you of course know what's going on here in our team, but the rest of our audience doesn't. Several months back, we were preparing to bring a single family home on the market in Astoria for 1.65, and it was an ambitious price point. The close was 155, but we felt, this is a great home. Somebody love this, and they're going to pick it up. As we were preparing to bring it to market, we reached out to our brokerage community, and 2 brokers brought their clients in, brokers who had been working with these clients for many months, and these buyers, they got burned one time after the next. They got outbid. One thing or another, they didn't win the property. Both of these buyers came in. The first buyer offered full asking price, and the second buyer offered $110K over the asking price. This property never went to market, right? Had they not been working with this broker, they wouldn't have gotten that phone call because of our outreach to the brokerage community. So they won this listing because of exactly what we're mentioning here.
So well said. 100% exactly what we're talking about. Anyone that's like, oh, I have Street Easy would have never seen that property. And the reason that property traded so well is because inventory. There's just not a lot out there. And at that time, it was right before the rates jumped. So anyways, long story short, we've said it on the show a million times. If you're in a position, yeah, we're back. So make sure you have your team. Make sure that you have your team. You want to ensure you've got a broker that's got relationships. You want to make sure that you've got a lawyer that knows how to navigate this market, and you want to make sure that you have a mortgage broker that knows how to get the best rates, how to get the best exceptions. Nico, thank you. I tell all my guests to make sure your phone is on Do Not Disturb, and I forgot to put mine on Do Not Disturb, but I just didn't know. So with that said, let me just take a second to remind everyone the kind of mortgage products that are out there, okay? There's essentially 3 chunks. We've got the 30-year fixed. We've got the ARMs. There's a 5-year ARM, 7-year ARM, 10-year ARM. The number is just how many years it stayed fixed before it goes to the adjustable rate. And then you've got your interest only, where you're just paying down the interest. You're not actually paying down your principal. Those are the 3 different kinds. Obviously, the interest only is going to be the cheapest on a monthly payment because you're not paying down your principal. The fixed rate is going to be the most expensive, both in the rate and the actual payment, because that's the surest thing for the consumer. So the bank's going to charge more for it, and the ARM is kind of in the middle. Depending on your plans for the property, it might make sense to only do the interest only because you're not going to hold it for too long. So why pay down any principal? It could make sense to do the ARM. In very few cases, I find it makes any sense to do the 30-year fixed. Even now, when rates, started to go up a bit, the thing about New York City particular, right? This comment is particularly meant for New York City. Most people do not own their home for more than 7 to 10 years. So if you plan to own your home forever, maybe the 30, maybe, but even then, I'm not sure. So long story short, there's these 3 different types of mortgage products, and there's also a lot of exceptions. As an example, my wife and I are actually looking to buy a home, and my income is 1099, and my income is mostly in the business. So I'm not an easy mortgage applicant, but because of my relationship with the bank and my prospects, we were able to get an exception, and now we're going to be able to qualify for a loan with the best possible rate. Whereas without my relationship with that bank, that's just not possible. So again, you want to have your team. You want to make sure that you're having the conversations. It's definitely good to do some research, and then don't, again, for the last 30 to 50 years, what's been drilled into people's minds, oh, 30-year fixed, 30-year fixed. It's a really expensive product and not necessary for most people. So you want to have a conversation. And I recommend having a conversation with the mortgage broker to talk about what the options are, what the cost payments look like, and also the real estate broker to talk about resale value and the strategic positioning of that property. Marc, talk to me about your buyers and what you're seeing. Are most of your people going towards 30-year fixed? Are they mostly going towards ARM, interest only? Like, what are you seeing on your end?
Yeah, that's a great question. And really it's a mixed bag. But what I can say is that people do lean on the 30-year fix as kind of like their mindset, their benchmark.
The
And
safety, yeah.
that it's that's what they're accustomed to hearing. That's likely what their parents did. And so
Right,
that's the direction to go in. But I encourage them to consider, what their personal goals are. I always ask them, how long are you going to live in this property? Are you going to
right,
be 5 years? Then if not, why are you paying down? Why are you paying down this loan? You have other options out
that's
there,
right,
and you really just need to be exposed to the different programs and to the different lenders that are going to give you the best option based on your specific goals.
that's
It's
right,
rare if you're buying a one bedroom apartment, first time home buyer, that you're going to stay there for eternity, right?
right,
It's 3 to
right,
5 plan. Most people that are buying that type of asset, they're in their 20s or 30s,
right.
and they're going to get coupled. They might have a kid. They might get a job offer in California, and then they want to drop everything and go. And in the meantime, they're paying down their loan for nothing.
Right,
So there
right,
are
exactly.
out there. And like, think about that. If you're doing an interest only, you're keeping more money in your pocket monthly to either invest in something else. Maybe it
Right.
goes into crypto. Maybe it goes into the stock.
That's right.
Maybe it's just for your own personal enjoyment and spending. But the point is that money is in your pocket, and
Yeah,
you get to live a better life or lifestyle.
that's right. That's right. 100%, man. And it's funny on the personal development side. There's plenty of people that I coach, and on the personal development side, there's a question that I ask people that 99.9% of the time the answer is yes, and that is, do you want to be happy? Right? At 99 point, there's the 0.01% that they've got stuff going on, but for the vast majority of humans, you ask them, do you want to be happy? The answer will be yes. And if you guys want to have a little fun, follow up with this question: what does that mean to you? Marc and I have had this conversation. He had it, man. He's like, my thing is bliss, and it's boom, boom, boom. Like Marc had it. But I got to tell you, 99.9% of the time, the answer is yes, I want to be happy. Maybe 20% of the time, when I ask the follow up question, what does it mean? What does it mean to you to be happy? Maybe 20% of the time, I get a real answer. Most of the time, it's like, well, you know, no, I don't know. Tell me, like, what you want to be this thing, you want to be happy. What does it actually mean? How do you know you're not happy right now? Like, how do you know you're miserable or not? What are the defining traits? What does it look like? I mean, I'm an entrepreneur. I love my measures, but it doesn't have to be even measurable. Like, paint me a picture. What does happy look like? Because most of us are in a place in our lives, or many of us, I should say most, many of us are in a place of our lives that we dreamed of being once upon a time. But for all of us, chronic overachievers, it's really easy to pay attention to the stuff you're not doing ever. So similarly in, my career of real estate sales, there's a question that I ask people that maybe 10% of the time, the potential buyers will have the answer. And that is, for how long do you intend to own this property? Maybe 10% of the time I get an answer. The other 90% is like, well, I don't know. We haven't really thought about it. Like, hold on a minute. Let's just consider what's happening. For most people, this is the largest purchase they're ever going to make until their next purchase. You're about to spend the most amount of money, like, ever. And when asked for how long do you plan to use this money on this thing, emoji shrug. So it's really cool. Like, part of what we do here is we help. We have a curated list of questions we ask. And part of what we do here is we clear the fog, right? We ask, there's a lot of I don't know what I don't know, especially for first-time home buyers. So we ask a lot of these questions and we help navigate and we give ideas. And so by the time someone's done with us, they have real clarity into what they're looking to do. But again, I just, I can't stress this. I can't stress this enough. Thank you, Nico. Appreciate it, man. I cannot stress this enough, how important it is not to just do what you might have read about in the papers or what your friend has done. I cannot stress the importance of talking to your team and figuring out what the options are. So we're coming up close to 12 now. Marc, any final thoughts, any tips? I find you to be like a consummate pro, man. We're very fortunate. I feel like honored to have you on our team. Anytime that you're out there, I feel really proud of the way you represent our brand, not just Litvak team, but Compass as well. So I think anyone that gets to work with you is really lucky, because not only do you have the professionalism down, like packed, but man, the level of integrity and care for your client. Like, you can't teach the integrity part. You can't really teach the care for the client part. And man, you got all that stuff going. So any final thoughts for anyone that's watching now, or for the 100,000 plus people that are going to watch when we circulate this? Thank you. Any final thoughts?
So number one is you might actually be able to afford more than you think. Especially with first-time home buyers, they get caught up. They're like, oh, I don't have the capital. Would not be true. And it does mean planning ahead, particularly, as you mentioned earlier, being a 1099. You really have to plan ahead. Independent contractors love to write off everything. I know it.
What are you talking about, Marc? What are you talking about?
Right? But let's face it, you got to pay your taxes, people. Pay your taxes. I bought a home. I paid my taxes. You want to buy a home and you're a 1099, you're an independent contractor. Yeah. You just got to do what you got to do, which means planning ahead. It means planning 2 to 3 years out. If you're a salaried employee, a bank is going to look at 1 to 2 pay stubs, right? So depending on what your own circumstances are, it's going to govern what you need to do. But don't be surprised that if you can actually afford more than you think. That's one thing. The other thing is, you might want to consider looking into a credit repair specialist. If your credit score is not perfect, get to work with a specialist, and they'll clean up your credit history. By the time you start looking for a home, you want your credit score to be impeccable so you can get the best rate. There are a number of other things that you can do as well, but certainly to piggyback off of what you said earlier, and I've been watching the show for a while, is it really, you can't undervalue the team that you're working with. A local attorney who really knows the product that you're buying, a lender who understands your own personal circumstances, and a real estate broker who's in the field, who knows your neighborhood, who has relationships with other brokers, who has relationships within certain buildings, and they're going to get the news before it's out on the street. Can't stress that enough.
Yeah, for sure. And by the way, you're so right about the credit specialist. That's a blind spot for most people. I got in trouble as a kid, and I had like a 540 score. Like, my credit was shot, and I worked with a credit specialist, and within 1 year it was over 700. That wouldn't have been possible on my own. Yeah, for sure, man. And look, folks, did you know there's loan product out there? We can buy property for 5% down. There's some product, like we have 2 new developments where there are banks that give special credits because of the location the bank is in. So on a $500,000 unit, the closing costs are going to be 10, 15 grand. We've got banks that are offering 7 to 10 grand of credits towards those closing costs. That's not even part of the negotiation. There are banks that'll do 10% down with no mortgage insurance. There are so many different variables. And if you're somewhere where income is a product, there's banks we have that do stated income, where basically they don't verify your income. You got to put a little more down, but they don't check your income at all. As long as you can afford it, you can afford it. So yeah, man, look, what I would recommend to everyone, my final thoughts, is give yourself the gift of a rent versus buy analysis. If you don't work with us and you work with somebody else, sure, God bless. There's plenty for everybody. And that's what they specialize in. Then cool, just have call your broker wherever you work with and just say, look, you know what? I've been renting for X amount of time. Here's what I pay in rent. Here's my financial situation. What could I buy? And just see what happens. I think you'll be really pleasantly surprised. And there's a lot of people that feel that over the next 12 months, there's going to be Black Friday sales across all asset classes, crypto and stocks and gold and everything. You know, I did a 3-month campaign on reporting on the Tony Robbins Financial Seminar that I went to. And there we talked about the different things that were going to happen. And almost everything, the event was in February. And I reported on it for about 3 months. Everything these guys said was going to happen, happened. It's like a bunch of Nostradamuses. But you'd be surprised what's possible. And again, even if it's not possible today, you know, at least you can put together the stepping stones to make it possible tomorrow. Mr. Dimov, what a pleasure coming on. Thank you for all you do here. I
So
bless
much
you.
fun.
Everyone, have a great day. Have a
You
great
as
day,
well, my
everyone.
friend.
Take care, guys. See
We'll
you,
see you on
Mark.
the street.
Enjoy the weather, everybody. See you.
Ciao.